thank the mayor, Mayor Ginther, for all of our city staff for their unwavering commitment to our residents of our city and the hard work that went into delivering the services and those things that are proposed in this 2025 budget. I also want to thank and acknowledge our invited presenters this evening, Deputy Director Adam Robbins from the Department of Finance, Director Sam Orth from our Department of Technology, our auditor, the esteemed Auditor Megan Kilgore, and our City Treasurer, Deborah Klee, for their dedication, their leadership, and for taking time to present on their respective department budgets and proposals. I would also like to thank my Vice Chair and also my President Pro Tem of Council, Councilmember Rob Dorrance, as well as Council President Harden, who is here with us. Every time he comes to hearings like this and I'm leading them, I'm like, am I in trouble? I don't know what's going on. But no, I want to thank him as well. And the rest of my council colleagues, some will be joining us this afternoon and be in and out. And so I just want to thank them in advance and also thank them for leading into this process to ensure that the final version of this budget truly reflects the needs of our residents. This year, council will be holding a total of 8 budget hearings that follow specific themes and topics. As I mentioned at the top of my remarks today, at today's hearing, will be about the Finance and Governance Committee, and we'll have presentations from the Auditor's Office, as well as the Department of Finance, the Treasurer's Office, and also the Department of Technology. We will also have a special presentation from our Legislative Research Office Director, Matt Erickson, on proposed legislation that will appear on next Monday's agenda regarding anticipated marijuana tax revenue. With this being Council's first budget hearing, I would like to share a few facts regarding the city's financial standings going into 2025. Next year's $1.23 billion budget, despite being a historical large budget, is the most austere budget that the city has faced in over a decade. Similar to companies and organizations, the city is not immune to higher costs of doing business. And as a result of inflation and many other factors, we also see those pressures in the budget that has been presented to us. Additionally, large increases in the city's operating costs, coupled with modest income tax revenue and the exhaustion of federal funds from the Biden and Harris administration, have placed us in a tight fiscal environment. For example, public safety is a top priority, not just for this council, but for our mayor, but for any elected official. And we've recently negotiated new contracts for our fire and police departments that reflect our commitment to the people who protect our city. While these agreements are necessary and just, they come with a significant fiscal impact that we must account for in this tighter budget season. And that said, Council is committed to ensuring that this budget continues to prioritize what our citizens need most: the health and safety of our neighborhoods, the creation of affordable housing, and ongoing support for workforce and economic development. It is also natural that as our city continues to grow, so do our expenses. And the challenges we are facing in this budget are not unique just to Columbus. This financial squeeze is being felt by municipalities statewide and in some respects nationwide. As such, to balance this year's budget while maintaining the quality of current services required some ingenuity. So with that, I would be remiss if I didn't give special thanks again to our city auditor and her entire team, Megan Kilgore, and also our Department of Finance led by Director Kathy Owens, who is here with us as well, for making sure that we continue serving our residents at the same level that we have. Tonight's hearing will be very straightforward in structure. We will start with a presentation from the Auditor's Office, followed by a presentation from our Finance Department, then the Treasurer's Office, and then the Department of Technology, and finally our Legislative Research Office. Following those presentations, we will hear public comment prior to concluding, and similar to all hearings, my team will keep an eye on our Facebook and YouTube streams for questions that we can answer over the course of the hearing. I will pause there and go to my council colleagues to see if there are any questions, but I want to really be clear that when we talk about the scenario that we're in and we hear this is not doom and gloom. The city of Columbus is doing fine. I mean, there are many cities around, I think, this country that would be envious of even where we are now. But the truth of the matter is that our growth that we have seen has been modest compared to previous years. The rescue plan dollars that came in from the Biden and Harris administration that were critical to ensuring that our economy rebounded, and the economy that we see surging right now is because of that infusion of dollars, let us be clear, has gone away, and we all knew that. And so this is going to be tighter than the past previous years, but it is normal for us. And it is a budget that is on par with where the city has continued to be. And so, again, we want to have an honest dialogue about that. And again, want to thank all those that participated in this budget process. Before I go there, I know we're joined now by Councilmember Nestor Day Akauer. I want to acknowledge her. Any comments from any of my colleagues, opening comments before we start? All right, I think we're good to go. So with that, I will now turn the floor over to my partner in good, our city auditor, Auditor Kilgore, for her presentation. Madam Auditor.
Thank you so much, President Hardin and Chair Bankston and members of council here. We're going to do a fast-paced journey through our budget presentation. So let's see if our technology works. Perfect. As you all know, since really 2018, we've embarked on a critical modernization journey, replacing outdated legacy systems with advanced cloud-based platforms such as Microsoft D365 for accounting and operations, Dayforce for payroll, and our GenTax system for our tax revenue system. These systems not only enhance the efficiency of our operations, but also ensure that residents and taxpayers have access to secure, intuitive, and user-friendly services. Our transparency portal, for example, it's an external-facing portal. It contains all kinds of frequently asked questions, and it's soon going to be powered by Microsoft Copilot, greatly enhancing some user experience and allowing our residents and our folks doing business with us to get answers to questions much, much faster. Our office firmly believes in the importance of investing in the business of government. When you consider the scale and the complexity of the systems we manage, rivaling that of a Fortune 1000 organization, it becomes clear that this level of investment is essential. These advancements enable us to deliver exceptional service, maintain public trust, and ensure that our systems operate as effectively and dynamically as the most, frankly, sophisticated private enterprises. One of our most exciting developments that we've shared with you that as it was building is that of our finance dashboard. This is a tool that will provide to all of the city's leadership team, budget analysts, financial analysts, all across the entire city, and they'll be able to kind of create their own dashboards and have access to vital statistics in real time. So it's not just simply a resource for our fiscal leaders, it's really a game changer for our financial decision making. Over time, this dashboard as well will evolve into a very sophisticated, dynamic ecosystem of knowledge, supporting not only our operations, but also in helping departments customize their own kind of fiscal goals and create some actionable items. Moving on to our tax system, I want to spend just a little bit of extra time on this because it's really the backbone of our city's general fund. This tax system supports about 400,000 taxpayer accounts, and it processes over about $1.3 billion annually. So to that, our modernization journey here is really, really, really impressive. In 2018, of course, I'm coming into office and sitting down with, you, President Hardin, at the time, and I think a couple of you, and speaking really about what we saw as the future. We knew at the time fewer than 2% of all taxpayers filed electronically. for a city of our size and the magnitude of our smart operations, we knew we had to change that. And so I wanted to share just kind of a progress update of how quickly we've scaled. In 2020, when the system had just launched, and early COVID, of course, we rapidly went up to 45%. Today, we're at 86% and growing. This is demonstrating, of course, the rapid scalability, but also the accessibility and putting ourselves as a city in the kind of the driver's seat. So we're continuing to really grow a lot of the features of the system. We have a saying in our office that no one likes to use a phone or go through anything labor-intensive to order a pizza, let alone pay their taxes. And so we're really trying to eliminate all of the barriers or, things that are not so enjoyable when doing so. So this includes features like growing our modern e-file service. Essentially, if you're a taxpayer right now, you're a small business, and you're using one of the many software providers that have tax prep and payroll services, you can quickly work with that software to directly file with the City of Columbus, avoiding that extra step of having to do it separately. So we're already seeing a great number of additional folks using that, but it's a great software benefit, especially for those just simply adding, kind of responsibility to their day-to-day operations of a small business. Launching very soon, we're including, the same ways that we are doing business day-to-day ourselves when we go get a cup of coffee or we go to the grocery store. We're adding those same features to the way that we do business. And something that I think we're really excited about that I've mentioned, I think, to a couple of you, is that our system, once it was, kind of launched, a number of others saw it. And so I'm really pleased to report that the state of Ohio has actually embedded our entire system, the same exact system that we're using. In fact, the difference is so small that the chatbot that we have, which is an owl, on the state's website, it's a cardinal. And so that, for us, is a huge success because that means in the complexities of the numbers of municipalities around Ohio, and especially central Ohio, it really simplifies from a compliance standpoint. It helps local residents and small businesses ease their day a little bit. So we're really excited about that. I think it underscores positively the power of governmental collaboration. Talent is probably the biggest story that I want to spend my valuable, time with you. Like I'm so proud of the modernization of our office, but I do know that it's not just about technology. It's about the people that make the technology work. As our systems have advanced, so too have the skills required to manage them. Today, our office manages 3 of the most critical systems for the entire city. Citywide payroll for almost 10,000 employees, our entire financial system, and of course, the tax revenue system. It's important to note that I think the evolution is positively also being shared by one of my proudest moments actually is happening right now with our partner in Department of Human Resources with Director Moses, who is now joining us and in the entire Dayforce platform to look at building out all of the technology that Dayforce offers into a highly advanced enterprise-wide human capital management system. But it's a great example of just awesome technological productivity and will continue to inform the city in years to come. So to that, our system today, our office today manages these 3 very critical systems. And these are massive, highly specialized platforms that are obviously very core to the city's operations. And to be clear, just to kind of, explicitly, state, our office actually manages these. We have a collaborative partnership with the Department of Technology, but they are not doing the day-to-day management. Our office manages these. We, of course, rely upon them for internet connectivity, desktop support, and the like. But it's important to kind of decouple that because we've had to really grow our expertise as these systems have also grown. And so to that, our 2025 budget request included a couple of expansion positions. The one that I want to focus on today is the one that I will really ask for your support on. And that position is for data security and analytics, especially inclusive of the growth with Department of Human Resources, but also the fact that our our own kind of teams, capacity and so forth it's really important that we grow forward. This particular request was not granted in the mayor's proposed budget to you, and so today I'm asking for that reconsideration. It's really important, I believe, for our office's continued success and our ability to securitize and support our systems. Similarly, our office's ability to, work a lot with our staff in these cutting-edge systems, it really hinges on maintaining a highly skilled workforce. And so I'll leave you with just an additional request. Our 2025 request also requested, continued levels of funding to support training and professional development for our staff, same as we requested in 2024. With our specialized systems, these are platforms that, as you know, process billions of dollars annually. Ongoing training for me is not a luxury, it's really a necessity to keep up with everything that is changing. And so we're really asking, for your reconsideration to include funding for our investment in training so that we do not risk falling behind or jeopardizing the efficiency and security of our operations. I would be delighted to answer any questions at all that you may have, and I thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Madam Auditor. I know as Finance Chair, we work closely together, and so I get clued into a lot of the modernization that's happening, and just want to commend your office for that. As also, we are taxpayers up here. I got the chance to use CRISP for the first time back in 2021, and so I can say it's a phenomenal system. I have a very critical question. How did we come up with an owl? I'm just joking. No, I'm just joking. You don't have to answer that.
You know what? Democracy. We asked the office. We asked all the people who did all the hard work, and they liked the wise owl.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to suggest that tiger. I'm East High Tiger, so I'm just,
Noted.
Anyway, to get back serious, I think you alluded to this already, and I want to give time for you to just talk about it a little bit more. Looking at the 2025 budget, currently as it stands, there's a staffing reduction. Or I guess a better way to put it is that there's a potential of not filling current vacancies that are there. And I know that your office has been very successful at implementing new technology for projects. But could you just talk about, will this have an impact kind of on your office? And more importantly, will this also, what should taxpayers and the public expect? Will there be a disruption at all with those vacancies not being filled potentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, just contextually to maybe speak a little bit more to the evolution of just our workforce, we actually have fewer employees today than we did when I came into office. And that's really just because of the technological advancements. That's not to say that the payroll cost is down. Our payroll cost is up, but it's not significantly above what has already been like the wage increases that have been offered. The more interesting, I think, question that you ask is around like the what ifs. And our role is really to invest in our operations and to try and reduce areas of risk. And for us, especially in our office, we really consider us the business, some of the operations behind the city of Columbus. And so we're making the recommendation that this position be funded. We did have a number of vacancies, but because of technological changes, we do not need to rehire for those types of roles. We simply do not. We have systems doing that work, but we do need to hire for the skills that we need today and the skills that Deputy Wilds here to my left and I really believe are necessary as probably our most important asset besides our people, and that's our data.
Yeah. And speaking with that data piece of it, and I'm just asking this question, I think for the folks in the public to understand, that when we even go through our audit, part of it is not just fiscally how responsible we are, it's also our systems and that protect that. So you can talk about how critical I think that data management piece is and that cybersecurity piece is to our AAA bond rating.
100%, and contextually, One of the features that I would say has grown the most from investors and rating agencies looking at large or governments like ourselves is management. And they really do look for that proactive, thoughtful planning just as importantly as they do our revenue streams, the structure and well-being of our economy. It's the decisions that we try and make ourselves to put ourselves in the best place possible.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Any questions from my colleagues at this time for our auditor? All right. Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation and also for lifting up those considerations. And of course, we'll take those into account.
Appreciate you, Chair. Thank you.
Next, we will hear a presentation from our Department of Finance and Management given by our Deputy Director, Adam Robbins. Again, I want to make sure I recognize our Director who is here with us, Ms. Kathy Owens, as well. Thank her for her service as well. But she is like me. I have bosses and folks who are much smarter than me, so I'm kicking over to Adam, our Deputy Director in Department of Finance.
Not sure that I'm much smarter, but I will at least attempt to look smart today. Do I have to? There we go. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Council President Hardin, Chair Bankston, President Pro Tem Dorns, and members of Council. On behalf of the Finance and Management Director, Kathy Owens, I am pleased to present Mayor Ginther's proposed 2025 operating budget. I will present a general overview of the budget, followed by specific comments on the Department of Finance and Management's budget. This is a $2.5 billion operating budget, of which slightly less than half, 48.7%, or $1.23 billion is for the operation of general fund divisions. The majority of my remarks will be related to the general fund operating budget. First, I would like to discuss the resources for the general fund. By far, the most important revenue source of the city is the income tax, which was originally projected to grow by 3% in 2024. In October, when building the estimate for 2025, the auditor used the same growth factor for 2024's income tax revenue. The city auditor's 2025 estimate for income tax growth is also at 3%, or a total of $898,474,000. This figure represents almost 76% of general fund revenue, or 73% of total general fund resources. Other general fund revenue sources are also expected to experience solid growth in 2025, especially property taxes and investment earnings. Due to increases in property values and the most recent reappraisals, property taxes are projected to grow 2.5% over 2024 receipts. And because of the continuation of high interest rates, investment earnings should bring in $51 million next year, an increase of $800,000 over 2024 expected collections. You guys probably didn't like that. Casino revenue. Is it working? Yeah. Casino revenue, fines and penalties, local government funds, and charges for services are all expected to increase over 2024's estimates as well. In 2025 will be the first year where the city will receive tax receipts on marijuana sales. This new revenue is estimated at $8 million for 2025. The carryover amount is projected at $17.1 million, and this amount includes $14.5 million in Finance's third quarter review savings. To wrap up the revenue side, a transfer of $19.7 million will be needed from the Basic City Services Fund in order to balance the 2025 budget. Now on to the expenditures or the budget. The operating budget funds all of the personnel, goods, and services that are necessary to deliver essential services to our citizens. Approximately 70% of the general fund budget funds personnel costs. 2025 general fund budget is 1.4% higher than the 2024 original budget as amended by Council, and 2.6% higher than the 2024 third quarter projection. This is a continuation budget that focuses on safety, housing, and transportation, as well as maintaining essential and everyday core city services. It should be noted that all of the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funded positions will be absorbed with current vacancies in the Health and Recreation and Parks departments. Insurance costs will increase 9% in the budget, and the workers' compensation rate remains at 1% next year. Safety continues to be a top priority with $774.5 million in general fund resources devoted to the Department of Public Safety. This funding level represents 63% of all general fund resources dedicated to operations. This budget includes funds to hire 180 new police officers and 10 lateral transfers. The budget also includes hiring 45 new firefighters. Fire and police cadet classes will continue next year as well. And the comprehensive neighborhood safety strategy is funded at $20.4 million next year. In the Department of Technology, which they'll get into in a little bit after me, 25 new positions totaling $1.6 million will be funded to fortify our data governance, data management, and cybersecurity. And in development, for the third year in a row, $10 million is budgeted for social service grants. We will continue our direct investment in the education of our children. The proposed budget allocates $10.3 million for the Early Start program, serving a total of 1,340 children in 2025. $2 million has been allocated for after-school programming targeting middle-aged school children. In total, $26.8 million is budgeted for summer, after-school, and job readiness programming for Columbus youth. In public service in 2025, Refuse's $16.5 million in tipping fees will continue to be paid from the general fund. Also, Columbus households began receiving recycling services on a weekly basis in 2023 and will continue to do so next year. The contract with Rumpke for recycling and yard waste totals $18.4 million in 2025. The budget also includes $2.5 million for workforce development programming. The collective commitment to the city's long-term fiscal health has again resulted in the maintenance of our AAA bond rating. Columbus is one of the largest cities in the nation to maintain the highest credit rating for debt from each of the three major rating agencies. During 2023's budget process, the mayor set a new goal for our rainy day fund, 10% of the 2023 budget, or $114.4 million by the end of 2027. While this budget does not include a deposit into the rainy day fund, a balance of $105 million is projected at the end of 2025 after interest earnings are deposited into the fund. This should keep us on our schedule to meet our new goal. Meeting this commitment will ensure financial stability for the city well into the future. As mentioned earlier, $19.7 million from the Basic City Services Fund will be transferred into the general fund in 2025, leaving no remaining balance in the fund. And this budget does not include a deposit into the 27th pay period fund, which is a reserve fund established to prepare for those fiscal years in which there are 27 pay dates rather than the standard 26. This will not occur until the year 2032. The 27th pay period fund will end 2025 with the same balance at the end of this year, $14.5 million. I would now like to address the Finance and Management Department's budget. Our 2025 budget is a maintenance budget. The proposed budget, including all funds, is $170.4 million. It supports 331 full-time and 20 part-time positions. The general fund represents slightly over $94.4 million of that total. The Facilities Management Division is the largest general fund division, with a budget totaling $24.9 million, including $6 million for utility expenses. The Fleet Management Division's proposed budget is $47.1 million, and it supports 132 full-time positions and 1 part-timer. Fleet is an internal service division that bills other departments for the services it provides. The division is responsible for the repair and maintenance of approximately 3,800 on-road and 2,600 off-road pieces of equipment essential to the delivery of city services. Within the division, $11 million is budgeted for fuel to power the city's fleet next year. As has been noted in previous budget discussions, the Finance Management Department's budget includes significant general fund resources, which, although budgeted within our department, benefits other general fund agencies. This includes $32.1 million for citywide technology billings, $12 million for economic development incentive payments, and $23.4 million in hotel-motel tax fund disbursements. And finally, the Department of Finance and Management partners with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to enhance workplace and supplier diversity. The Purchasing Office, along with other departmental divisions, ensures that procurement efforts are reviewed by ODI and places minority and small business participation goals on all relevant projects. Additionally, the Department of Finance participates in diversity outreach events that help vendors navigate the bidding process, as well as advise them of upcoming bidding opportunities. I would like to thank the Mayor for his leadership, Auditor Kilgore for her guidance, as well as Finance Committee Chair Bankston and Vice Chair Dorns for their partnership. I would also like to thank the Finance and Management Department's budget staff, as well as the fiscal staff of all the other city departments who helped develop the proposed 2025 operating budget. Thank you. That concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director, and I do have a couple questions, but I do want to just highlight and bring something up around Department of Finance's ongoing commitment and working closely with our department, our officers, say, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that we have seen tremendous successes. I think I've gotten a small briefing on where we're in this year, probably the highest of diversity spend that we have had. And so I just want to commend you all on looking at new ways to ensure how we break up those packages, how we ensure that we have equity in how we are spending dollars. And also for highlighting the fact that, I mean, we talk about this $1.23 billion budget, but 76% of it is personnel, right? And so that other 24%, if you will, and how we spend that has to be thoughtful and has to reflect our community. So I want to thank you as well as Director Owens for your commitment to that. Can you talk about the creative measures or unique approaches that Finance Department took in constructing this budget? I think you mentioned a couple of them in the presentation, but just want to lift up some other things that were done in order for us to balance this budget. And I say unique, and I say for us to balance our budget because cities, governments, we are unique. Unfortunately, we are not Congress. I don't have the ability just to print money, and I don't have the money. I don't have the ability to be in debt. We have to have a balanced budget. And so with that, it is always about balancing investments in our community and the needs of our people, but also making sure that the operations of the city and performing those basic city services are met. So if you could just lift up some other kind of unique things that the department had to do to really juggle and meet this kind of these tight constraints that we're in.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, you're correct. We get a, not everybody knows, but we get a number from the city auditor sitting to my left. And we can't budget a penny over that dollar, so whatever we get from the auditor, that's what our budget is. If we don't feel like we have enough money to do everything we need to do, we do have to come up sometimes with some creative things. Hopefully, we were able to use the Basic Services Fund this year. So that was $19.7 million, so that helped fill quite a big hole right there. That's something that we most likely will not have by this time next year, unless we receive some outside dollars and most likely from the BWC. But other things that we did, for the first time ever, maybe not ever, but the first time since 2009, I think, we did not make a deposit into the rainy day fund. We are counting on, good investment earnings to help bring us to the goal that we've set. And I think we will meet that, but we did not put our usual $2.75 million in to that fund. Also, as I mentioned, the 27 pay period, which was established in 1994, this is the first time that we've never made a deposit into that fund. So, there were hard choices to make. We didn't like to do either of those, but we did. Then we have the ARPA positions I was discussing. We knew that ARPA would be a one-time funding source, but we have a bunch of positions that are being funded out of ARPA funds, and we used available vacant positions within the Health Department and the Rec and Parks Departments to help fund those positions, so we would not have to, basically lay off those positions, even though they were probably mostly hired on as full-time limited employees, so they were known to be limited, but we'd like to keep the programs going, so we decided to fulfill that and have them be absorbed into next year's budget. And then one other one, travel and training was removed from all the mayor's cabinet departments. I think that totaled about $1.6 million. The departments will be allowed to use other funds to travel and for training purposes next year, but we did make a decision to strip those dollars out of the budget to help get to the budget you have in front of you.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And just to clarify, can you talk about what is driving some of those expenses, right? Again, a 2.3% growth although modest, it's still healthy. So I want to make sure that we are not being alarmist to the community. The city continues to grow, but so do our expenses. And so can you just talk a little bit about what areas have, I think, grown the most and where we're seeing that pinch?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, our number one expense is personnel. Our costs for insurance have gone up quite a bit in the last couple of years. The years before, 2 or 3 years ago, we actually were lowering our insurance costs that we were charging the divisions. Now we've been on the up 10% increase. This year's budget included a 9% increase. And I'm hoping that's enough. We may need more money for insurance costs. So that insurance costs are definitely going up. And then, we have the contractually agreed agreements with the bargaining teams, with the bargaining negotiations that we've agreed to. They've been fair to everyone. So, we have given out fair increases, but our income tax, which is our number one resource, is not growing at the same rate presently as the increases that we gave out were. So hopefully this is just a short-term problem, and by the time we're talking next year, income tax will hopefully be growing, and when we start talking about 26 and 27 contracts to be renewed, we'll get more in line with what income tax is. But those are our highest, and then of course, just like everybody else, we're feeling the pinch from lots of different vendors out there, and we have to, to be able to, do the city's work, we have to use outside sources for a lot of things, and their costs are going up as well. So just like anybody else in the city, whether it be private, nonprofit, or government, everyone's costs have been going up.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because I always want to lift that up, because government sometimes is not seen as a business, but there is a business aspect to it. We employ over 8,000 of our friends, our neighbors, our family members, which again puts food on the table for folks and invests in their future in our community. So want to make sure that we are lifting that up, that those investments and those negotiations that were made by the administration, approved by this council, means that we unapologetically want to invest in our people who are performing those services, because in order to have, I believe, top-notch quality services for our city, we also are in the job market competing against other organizations. And so we have to be able to be competitive to make sure that we get top talent as well. One other thing that we skirted over a little bit, I think, because all of us, we talk this inside jargon. Can you just talk about Basic City Services Fund, what that is? Because I just want to make sure that folks have a level set of what we mean by we had to use money from the Basic City Services Fund to help balance this budget.
Sure, thank you. The Basic Services Fund, it's basically a reserve fund that was set up, I'm pretty sure it was set up when the 2009, around the 2009 recession time. And it's another backstop. It's to basically, we put money in there to ensure that we would have basic city services going forward. So anytime, and I believe the first big deposit was because we enacted a new income tax, and once we hit 2.5%, a lot of revenue came in. We were able to fund right away the Basic Service Fund. Since then, it's mostly been funded with Bureau of Workers' Comp, BWC rebates that up until 2020, we were receiving about once every year or so, and then during 2020, we received two very, very large ones. Since 2020, we have been using the balance of the Basic City Services Fund. We've been drawing it down to help fund each year's budget. It's a reserve fund. We would love to build that up again. In the past, when we seem like we may have some extra money at the end of a budget year, we may put some money in. Council has put money into it before. Anytime we can, we'd love to put extra money in the Big City Services Fund. Right now, unfortunately, we had to use it just to maintain our basic city services, which is what it is for. So, we would love to have more money there available, but right now, we're gonna see a zero balance for next year.
Thank you for that. And my job as a politician is to speak in plain terms. So basically what I'm hearing from you is Basic City Services Fund is like your regular savings account. And I think some folks get that confused with rainy day fund, right? Rainy day fund is like break only in case of an emergency, all right? So we're not at that point, but we're at a place where we do have to look at our emergency savings account, short-term savings account, if you will, to be able to fill the services that we have been providing to the community up to this point. So is that?
I'd say that's a fair
okay.
analogy.
All right, just wanted to make sure. I only have one savings account in my house, so I'm working on my emergency rainy day fund. Anyway, any questions or comments from my colleague, Councilmember Rosso de Padilla?
Thank you, Councilmember. Can we go back to the 27th payment fund? Sorry, I needed another cup of coffee today. So in that fund, we missed a payment, and it's around $3 million, is that correct? And so we have time to make it up because it's 2032? I'm doing good with that, only one cup of coffee today. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like and what is the plan to make up for that? Because just again, in speaking in plain terms, that fund essentially in 2032 could be 35 million, correct?
Yeah.
Around, which is obviously large, which is good fiscal management for us to pay into it. But what is the plan for us to make up for that 3 million? And then you and I had this conversation. Do we plan for that over time if we're breaking that up into increments? Do we plan for what that looks like? Does that 3 million grow? Is it just a $3 million payment that we make the one time because we want to get to that 35 million?
Well, thank you. We certainly do need to make it up. I guess our options would be, and we don't have a concrete plan at this point, but our options would be either to double next year's payment, which is, each year it grows a tiny bit, but basically about $6 million next year. We could also put $1 million in extra for the next 3 years if we didn't want to hit it all in 1 year. And then, the third option, if council has money at the end of the year, they're welcome to put money into the 27 pay period fund as well. So
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate that.
There's a lot of different options really to go, but it really would be wise at some point to put that $3 million back in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Nope. Defer to the council president.
Council President?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. Just following up on the 27th pay period, you said we've never not invested money into it. And Deputy Director, this question might be as much for the auditor as it is for you. One of the things that we most pride ourselves in is our AAA bond rating. We know that we're good, that we're fiscally sound. Not making an investment in the 27th pay period, how will is there something that this council should know about how that could be perceived outside of the city?
I'll defer to the auditor. I can't, I'll defer to the auditor. Thanks.
I think President Hardin and Chair Bankston, the question, around not paying into it is really one of a management's decision. And that would be the reflection that any rating agency or potential investor in Columbus would look at, just as they would question the same of a business not ensuring that they're setting aside those funds when they're coming due. And so for me, it is a red flag. It is of concern. Just to be clear, you did not ask me this question, but I do not believe it is necessary, given the financial flexibility that the city of our size has, our history of fiscal stewardship, and our ability, even through proven, really tough times, proven history of working collaboratively in the event of fiscal downturns, to put any additional money in the rainy day fund at this time.
Okay.
I do believe, if possible, that it is extremely important to make that contribution to the 27th pay period, as that speaks to the management of our city.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. In my last question, you kind of quickly spoke about, and the chair alluded to as well, conversations around a weed fund, a marijuana fund. You have an $8 million, truthfully, guesstimate of what that could look like in 2025. Is that a conservative estimate? Is that a pretty liberal estimate? As we're looking for where things could change in the budget and where our position could change in 2025, how do we make that assessment of that $8 million fund? Could you just unpack that for us?
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, the auditor put the $8 million in her revenue estimate, so it really was her estimate. But I think that estimate, I've heard anywhere from $6 to $20 million. So I think, and we're talking about really when collection started, which was September, I think. So we're talking about September through the end of this year through June, and then it's going to start sometime, I don't know when, after July. I don't know if it's monthly, quarterly, I don't know when it's going to be coming in. But at some point, you'll be catching up, I'm guessing, next year by the end of December. If I had to bet on it, I'd probably say we'll end up with more than 8 million. Do I have any real great? No, I mean, I don't think anybody really has a good firm, unless the auditor has spoken to the state in the meantime. I don't know that the state has issued any numbers. I don't, at least per jurisdiction. So I don't know that we can have a real good feel at this point what those numbers are going to look like next year at this time.
Sure, please.
Deputy Director Robbins is absolutely accurate. Our role with the revenue estimate was to provide the mayor in his budget, and therefore you, with a conservative but realistic, just listening, a conservative but realistic estimate. Okay. I'm going to give it a pause just for a sec. I hope that's our heat kicking on.
It is chilly in here. Let me just say up front, my next question is this a time for us to invest in a buy local campaign for the marijuana fund?
So I think I can continue. Our objective was to provide to you a conservative but realistic estimate, because that is where we are incented. I think it is fair to say that we will certainly know more soon into 2025, but to date, we do not have any definitive measurable revenues that have come in that have been reported to us by the state. We've run analyses about every which way, including looking at other states and also looking at numbers that have been provided by our research partners in Central Ohio. And at this point, that $8 million was our informed estimate based upon, again, our role as auditor. We do not want to provide a number to you that then you have to cut. So we feel comfortable with that amount. Do we anticipate that it could be a little bit more? Certainly. Do we hope it will be? Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President, and I know President Pro Tem had a question, but I just do want to hit on that really quickly, that the way that the marijuana funds are distributed is by consumption. So it comes down from the state based off of sales that happen within city limits. So to the Council President's point, if you do partake, whether recreationally or medically, we encourage you to buy within the city limits. With that, President Pro Tem, Vice Chair, I will kick it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Always with the helpful advice on the raising of revenues within the city of Columbus, so thank you for that. Mr. Robbins, I think you've outlined a couple of these different things, but again, to allow residents potentially to see this a little bit more in a condensed fashion, you mentioned a number of ways in which, and I think the Chair used the term sort of a continuation budget. It's certainly not an expansionary budget compared to past years that we've seen in the city. And with that, because of the increase in personnel costs, given the increase in some of the collective bargaining agreement deals that the city as a group is labor partners, and again, inflationary pressures on everything else. In order to meet those things, we've had to, make some, small adjustments and cuts in some places. You mentioned the elimination of travel and training funds for various departments. You've mentioned, again, transfer from the basic city services to sort of as a stopgap here. mentioned not filling some positions that are currently available. Could you, those are the main takeaways that, again, I think in prior conversations I've had with the Department of Finance as far as those initial cost cutting or cost consciousness measures that the department and the administrations have been taking. Is there anything that I'm not adding to that list at this point? Is there anything that comes to mind for you that, hey, this is another example of the city sort of belt tightening to some degree, given the budget environment that we're in?
Thank you. I would say nothing substantial. Every year, we look at the budgets of different departments, and we may tweak tiny little dollars here and there. We call them technical adjustments, and but nothing that stands out that would be of major concern to anybody.
Okay. And to that point, I think some residents may not be aware of how the budget gets created generally, right? So again, we're here talking about the mayor's budget coming to council for review and potential passage. Could you talk about how the Department of Finance works with individual departments and how they come up with their department budget, which ultimately is reflected with what comes to council?
Sure. So our budget, we start the process back in May. I have to come up with a revenue estimate well before the auditor gives us her official estimate. We come up with a revenue estimate, and then we divvy the dollars up, and we send them out to the departments. We call them target budgets. So the departments basically, they get that sometime at the end of June, early July, and they start building their budgets. We don't even, we help them with technical help and maybe some cases, what goes into their budget, but we basically leave them to it, and then they return their budgets back to us, usually around the last day or two in August. At that point, we review their budgets, and then we have a collaborative process with the departments where we kind of like look at it, and we maybe take some things out, add some things in. We kind of like, there may be some technical things that we change, but at some point, the auditor gives us, usually around mid-October, she would give us her actual revenue estimate, which, I made my estimate back in May. It's now October. We both of us have to project how revenues are going to do this year for her based on, and that's how she will build next year. I have to project how expenditures are going to do this year at that time. So there's a lot that goes into it. That would be, those two numbers go into the carryover. And then we finally get her number, and then we start to, like this year, the number wasn't as big as I would have liked it to have been. And that's why we realized, when we first started talking that in October, that we were going to have to start making some tough decisions. So at that point, we just, the departments, the Department of Finance and Management, and then the mayor's office, we kind of all sort of collaboratively come up with numbers that work for everyone, and then we present it to you by November 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. I appreciate that, just to help to break it down for potential residents who are watching it. And to that point, again, we're talking about these sort of belt tightening measures. So when we talk about that process, you're sort of making your a good faith estimate before you get the real estimate. So you've got a couple of different moving targets that are going on here. So just that folks sort of understand where in that process, when you say, hey, where are these sort of budget measures going to come from? Are those originally coming from the department? Are those coming from the mayor's office through working with the Department of Finance? Just as far as understanding where, in fact, we're asking departments to say, hey, this is going to be a little bit tougher than normal years. Take a hard look at your operations and where you may be able to save some of those dollars. Just want folks to sort of better understand where that comes from.
So thank you. It comes from all three, really. Some departments will send out their target budget, and within like a couple days, they already know what their number looks like. And they some don't look at it for a while. That's their prerogative. They've all summer. But some know pretty quickly that, boy, this looks like kind of a tighter year. They start to, they have themselves, we don't tell them what to do. We let them build their budget. So they may decide, this position, it's empty. We haven't had it for a year. Maybe we can do without that. We can move monies over here. Maybe this contract, we can do this in-house now. There's a lot of different measures they can do over this. They have a whole couple months to work on it. So, excuse me, by the time it gets back to us, then yes, we have some, now we start talking to them. What did you do? Okay, now we may come up with some other ideas. And then of course, it's the mayor's budget. So at the end of the day, what the mayor wants to do is what matters the most. So we get input from the mayor and his staff. So between all three of us, hopefully by the end of the day, it's a budget that everyone, can, we're all happy with, I mean, no one's happy if anything gets cut, we know that. But, and in other years, no, everyone's happy, but some years are a little harder than others, and this was a harder one.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. I appreciate you sticking with me just to sort of walk through that process, because again, it's been a while since the city's been in this kind of position compared to priors where we've been talking about this sort of that, where we're expanding versus, hey, where do we really need to invest to make sure we're serving the residents in the best way possible. So thanks for sticking with me and for walking through that. Appreciate it.
Of course, yeah.
All right. Thank you to my colleagues. And with that, thank you again to the Department of Finance and Management. We will now move to our next presentation from our city treasurer, Treasurer Klee, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I think so.
Council President Harden, Chair Bankston, other members of council, pleased to present the Treasurer's Office budget this evening. Our department's successes this year, we've been partnering with the Auditor's Office and the Department of Finance and Management, as you may know, with the goal of enhancing financial operations citywide. We are leading the banking modernization project and transitioning all of our services from our current bank to JP Morgan Chase. We are working with every agency in order to be able to effectuate that transfer. And specifically, what we're doing right now is we're sitting through all the implementations for each agency that takes credit cards and online payments. That's what we're doing every day. This slide is sort of an indication of the breadth and depth of the city's project, the Treasurer's Office in collaboration with the rest of the city in implementation of the new banking contracts. It pretty much covers every agency, and we're working hard to help that happen by our target deadline, which is the end of May of 2025. The city treasurer's proposed 2025 budget is a total of $1,934,668. That comprises $1,292,987 in personnel costs, which is representative of 7 full-time and 2 part-time positions. We've got $4,200 in supplies costs, and we've got $637,481 budgeted for services, which is comprised of our investment advisory contract, which supports the city's investments, $240,000 next year, $105,000 in the treasurer's banking contracts, $30,720 for software that relates to our treasury management process and accounting, and $250,000 for contract technology support of the city's banking and merchant services. The mission of the Treasurer's Office is to assist, direct, and maintain the fiscal integrity of the City of Columbus, to disperse payment on order of the city auditor, to deposit all funds into the city's bank account, and to invest all excess funds not needed for operations. What do we do? The City Treasurer's Office provides support to its internal customers, the departments and divisions of the City of Columbus that serve the public directly. As the city's banker, the City Treasurer strives to enhance payment options to reach all Columbus citizens in every way our public wishes to make payments. We manage the city's investments through our contract for investment advisory services. Our investment advisor adheres to the city's guidelines for investments for safety and liquidity, and they look for strategies to maximize investment earnings for the city. The Treasurer's Office, as I said, is in the midst of its banking modernization initiative, the result of a 2-year RFP process. A significant part of this effort is to transition the city's merchant agencies from our current merchant processor. Our goal, as I said, is to complete this transition by the 1st of June 2025. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. And I do have just one question that kind of focuses on modernization in this space, and want to commend your office, again, in partnership with our auditor, on the modernizations that have been made. I have been around City Hall for a little bit, so I remember the days of coming to pay your water bill down at City Hall and all of that. And thankfully, those days are not necessarily gone, but we see a lot of it more online now. So with that, are there any additional adjustments or changes with budgetary implications within municipal treasurer modernization space that the city should be mindful of? I know that we've made considerable measures, but as you are working in this space across the country, really, are there things that we should be mindful of and be thinking of on the horizon?
We do have hope that in the coming year that we'll have opportunities to collaborate with the auditor for such strategies. We have a wish. At this time, we do not see a need for additional funding, but we will be happy to report on that when we have more information and have an opportunity to explore those options with the auditor's office.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And again, I call them the small but mighty team over there in the treasurer's office. Any questions from my colleagues? All right, thank you. Seeing none, we will move to our next presentation from our Department of Technology, given by our Director of Technology, Sam Orth. Director?
Well, good evening, President Harden, Chair Bankston, members of council. I'm joined this evening by Deputy Director Pam O'Grady and our Assistant Fiscal Officer, Nicole McCartney, to present our Department of Technology's proposed 2025 operating budget. As you know, 2024 has been a challenging year for our department, marked by a cyber terrorism event that the city experienced in July. While much of the latter half of the year is focused on responding to the cyber attack, the Department of Technology has remained steadfast in enabling city departments to achieve more through technology. Despite the challenges this year, I'm proud to highlight some of our accomplishments. As we close out 2024 in collaboration with city departments, we've strengthened our infrastructure, fortified cybersecurity, enhanced services for all residents of Columbus. Our tech desk provided exceptional support this year, processing over 60,000 tickets with a 98% resolution rate, including resolving nearly 33,000 tickets on the first call. This reflects our commitment to delivering timely and effective service. In infrastructure, we completed critical upgrades at police headquarters, municipal court, and in planning for the Fran Ryan Center, among other facilities, ensuring operational resilience across the city. Our cybersecurity efforts were equally impactful. We monitored over 200 billion cyber events, blocked more than 400,000 cyber threats, and contained 373 incidents. We also migrated 9,000 devices to SentinelOne for improved endpoint protection and have continued citywide cybersecurity assessments to stay ahead of future threats. In client services, we modernized public safety communications by transitioning systems to the city's Cisco telephone platform and implementing enterprise-wide upgrades such as Nextlog call recording and DocuSign consolidations. These initiatives have strengthened reliability, efficiency, and security across city operations. Our Enterprise Project Management Office achieved significant milestones, including transitioning municipal courts to the city network and completing a comprehensive review of 320 technology contracts. These efforts have improved service delivery and operational resilience. Our applications team transformed Columbus.gov by consolidating 10,000 pages into 1,800, creating a more streamlined and accessible platform for residents. Through Gov Delivery, we've reached over 6.5 million residents with timely updates. We also partnered with city departments to modernize key systems for utilities, health, and public services. And lastly, our data and analytics services section delivered key contributions, including database modernizations, GIS enhancements, and tools such as the capital improvement budget dashboard, the power outage map, and the city council district lookup application. These efforts ensure our city remains data-driven and accessible to all residents. This year has also seen the expansion of our talent management initiative, which remains a central priority. While technology evolves rapidly, it's our people who make it all work. With Columbus being the fastest growing technology job market in the Midwest, competition for talent is fierce. Combined with the city's growing use of information technology needed to support city operations, we've made talent development a cornerstone of our strategy going forward. Our talent management initiative focuses on cultivating an active talent ecosystem for the entire city by attracting, developing, and retaining talent to expand opportunities for growth and advancement. We're committed to connecting, growing, and empowering individuals at all stages of their careers, fostering collaboration, engagement, and innovation while driving continuous improvement to deliver value for both departments and the citizens we all serve. We began our Talent as a Service offering in 2023 with public service and recreation and parks. Based on the positive feedback we've gotten from those departments, combined with the support of the Mayor Ginther, we propose expanding our staff in 2025 to include resources that directly support IT modernization initiatives citywide. This includes 4 networking and fiber specialists dedicated to advancing the city's network modernization efforts. This includes expanding fiber connectivity to key city facilities such as fire stations and recreation and park locations. This ensures robust and reliable infrastructure for critical services at those locations. City data analysts are being requested to support the Mayor's Opportunity Rising initiative. These analysts focus on 21 citywide priorities, including public safety, health, and affordable housing. They will work closely with city departments to help them understand and leverage their data, enabling informed decision-making to better serve the public. 7 positions for the Talent as the Service program, which include a dedicated cybersecurity specialist for public safety, and 6 flexible positions serve as placeholders to meet specific departmental needs as they arise, providing adaptability to address emerging priorities. 3 specialized roles dedicated to IT governance. These staff will organize and maintain the city's information technology planning portfolio. These positions focus on systems assessment, ensuring data security, and upholding data privacy standards across departments. And finally, 5 desktop support technicians who deliver on-site frontline assistance to city staff. These professionals ensure timely support for end user in their offices, addressing technical issues to maintain smooth daily operations. Our proposed operating budget consists primarily of 4 cost centers. These include our personnel budget, which makes up approximately 46% of our annual spending, along with software licensing and support and hardware maintenance, which makes up approximately 41% of our annual budget. As we mentioned at last year's budget testimony, DOT anticipates a continued increase in software and hardware costs due mostly to capital acquisitions transitioning to ongoing operational support, including items purchased with CARES Act and ARPA funding, combined with a worldwide semiconductor shortage, which impacts maintenance costs, and the increasing costs of software as a service license renewals, which are increasing from 20 to over 400%, depending on the software vendor that we're doing business with. And in some cases, software vendors are dictating to customers whether they will support legacy on-prem solutions, which is having an impact on overall software costs. The other 2 components of our budget include debt service and capital acquisition, which is approximately 10% of our operating budget, and materials and supplies such as electricity to power the data centers, which comprises the remaining 3% of the budget. But as you can see, 87% of our operating budget is personnel maintenance and licensing for use of the city's systems. With the city's growing dependence on information technologies to serve the citizens of Columbus, Our proposed budget is $63,439,624. This supports and grows the staff talent that are necessary to plan, build, and run IT systems within city government and the ongoing licensing, maintenance, and support of the city's IT investments. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposed budget this evening, and certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director, for presenting that. I think you touched on one of my questions around, I think, the increase in personnel. Definitely, I think, a response to the ever-changing landscape of technology. But without, of course, still under investigation, as well as, more importantly, litigation, why we can't really speak openly about certain things. Could you speak just broadly how those 25 positions could help in our response, or more importantly, how we move forward from the cyber incident that we had this year?
Chair Bankston, members of council, certainly one of the themes this evening, you've heard the word modernization several times across the presenters here this evening, and the driver behind modernization and the use of technology universally in our government is based on people. And it takes people with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to run those systems. And it also takes people to manage the most critical component of IT systems, which is the data component. You also heard that this evening. These resources will be of great assistance to city departments. We heard about a couple systems this evening. The auditor has 3 mission-critical systems. There are certainly other mission-critical systems within city government. Examples include things like our computer-aided dispatch and our 911 platform, among others. All those systems, there's over 500 systems in city government. They all have data. These resources will assist the city departments in understanding the data that are within their systems, and that understanding will lead to cybersecurity controls and how we better manage data for the city generally going forward.
And thank you for hitting on that last point, Director, because my understanding of it, right, is the Department of Technology is really a service-based organization to other departments. So your department doesn't control every single piece of technology or manage every single piece of data. There are some that are managed by individual departments. Would you say about how much is in your control, and then how much of the other, I guess, percentage of your work is about advising other departments and providing services to them?
Chair Bankston, thank you for that very important and necessary question. In many respects, we are a service provider. And we provide a variety of services. We provide some enterprise services that all of city government consumes. An example would be the network environment where we all connect to the internet and we connect to each other within city government is an enterprise service that DOT provides. We also provide hosting services, much in the same way that an Amazon or a Microsoft Azure provides hosting services to city departments. And then you have applications that are run by individual city departments, as you point out. While we don't have an exact number on the percentage of total systems that DOT provides to the city overall, we believe that is about 45% of those 500 systems are DOT-provided systems, the other systems being directly managed by city departments in some form or fashion.
Gotcha. And then one of the other things I want to talk about, and I think it's something that come up in many of the budgets you heard today, is around talent. And you mentioned and alluded to it around the competitive nature specifically of the technology field itself. What are we doing to try to recruit folks when we know that in some respects we're at a competitive disadvantage? We can't pay some of the salaries that Intel and some other folks. I mean, I saw some of them Intel jobs, and I was about to tell the council president I'm about to look for another new career. But what are some of the things that we are doing to recruit talent. And then also in the meantime, we will still have to rely on contracted services to meet the demand.
Chair Bankston, thank you for that question as well. I think in prior testimony, we talked that during COVID, we were seeing 40% vacancy rates. And prior to COVID, when we posted a position, we would have 300 to 400 respondents, and it went down during COVID to a low of maybe 1 to 10 responses for a position posting. I am happy to tell you that we are now at a 14% vacancy rate, so we went from approximately 14 to 14%. And we really did it in our talent management work, that we really engaged the entire leadership within DOT to become much more actively engaged. It was kind of more tactical in the past, where we would just post positions, to now a more of laser focused on recruitment and recruiting within their social networks. We've leveraged several different IT job sites and LinkedIn in particular. But probably the most visible thing we've done is to go out into the community at recruiting events. And those recruiting events, because IT staff generally, while people stay within organizations over a long period of time, they're also somewhat mobile. Organizations grow, they contract, and when that happens, IT staff can move around within markets. So being more visible in the market, more word of mouth, and being more direct in communication with our leadership and their social networks has really helped us go from that 40% vacancy rate to the 14% that I mentioned, or the 11% I mentioned a moment ago. And kind of the metaphor I use is, before we would farm, now we kind of hunt. I don't know that's really an apt metaphor, but being really laser focused. And I think going forward, as we look into the marketplace, the talent shortage is not going down anytime soon. I looked at industry data earlier today, and a lot of the positions that we are recruiting for, and I'm sure the auditor is recruiting for, remain in high demand, whether it's cybersecurity staff, data architects, project managers, software architects, infrastructure managers. I can go on and on. All these positions are in extremely high demand, especially here in Central Ohio, with the job growth that we have from Microsoft and Intel and Google and Meta and so on, all locating here. So it's something we all have to stay focused on for the foreseeable near future.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And you also pointed out something, it's not a question for you to answer, but I just want to highlight that ongoing licensing and software costs are just going through the roof. I remember a time when you bought one enterprise license, right, for all of Microsoft or all of Adobe, and now it's an annual thing. And so that is one thing I think that we have to be mindful of and keep an eye on as well. So as personnel costs go up, so does also the technology, because of, I think, the climate that we are in from operating in this digital exchange and this new information age that we will have to keep up with. And so I want to thank you again for looking at those ways to modernize, but also investing in the personnel, because I think that there's a misconception that machine learning and AI are coming to necessarily take jobs or to remove things. There still has to be people behind the scenes that are managing that. And so I just want folks to understand that as we are navigating through this space, cybersecurity is only one part of it, but it's so much deeper than that, and understanding that as we move forward, even as lawmakers, that data is essential to the decisions that we make. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Councilmember Barroso de Padilla.
Thanks, Chair. Director, I do have a question about just thinking about cybersecurity. Embedded in this plan, or is it part of the plan, whether now or in the near future, beyond fortifying our systems, right? Especially just given what you shared around how much of this you control and don't control. Is there a piece of this that is training for our staff and folks who are using our technology assets? And is that part of our plan, and is that in this budget, reflected in the budget as well?
Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, Without question, absolutely. I think Councilmember Bankston in prior discussions has said, and we certainly agree, that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility when we think about the nature of our systems across city government, from employees and staff that use those systems to the systems owners that run them. We all have a role to play in understanding what we can do to protect our systems. And so part of the plan and those 3 IT portfolio managers and those data analysts will be oriented around working with our colleagues across city government and helping them to understand their role in cybersecurity. And it would also include an employee component. So we have done some cybersecurity training at a staff level previously, and you will see continued and increased investment in end user training in addition to really embracing our joint responsibility across city government.
And is the thought that that would be like a yearly kind of training that folks would have to go through to ensure, because, you know, things are constantly changing, new things are constantly evolving, and so understanding and catching those new employees as well?
Yes, ma'am, without question. Cybersecurity, sadly, is something that we will have to all remain focused on for the foreseeable near future, whether it's in our individual lives or in our work lives. Our need to protect our information and our systems is not going to go away anytime soon. And unfortunately, cyber criminals are honing their craft and continuing to find ways to attack us, which means that we must always remain vigilant and must always, as hard as it is sometimes to make it the top of mind, it's something we all have to focus on. And part of our role will be to remind us all of that responsibility through training and engagement and collaboration and making it more top of mind for all of us.
Thank you. I wanted to just illustrate that point because I think as we talk about this, it certainly is people and it certainly is systems, but then it's also the people, right? And ensuring that all of us are responsible and thinking about these things as we're using, whether it's folks using one of our systems externally or us using our systems internally, that folks are making sure that they are vigilant about, those emails that come from people, especially I think for folks, here that we are pretty consistently, and I think for the majority of the city, pretty consistently receiving emails from unknown sources, right? And how do you know when they're safe and when they're not? And so there's both that element of a system, making sure that we're catching that within the system, but also that we are remaining vigilant as well. So I just wanted to make sure, I think, this has been top of mind, top of every council meeting. And so as folks are watching this and we're talking about the investments that we're making, that they understand all the components of that security as well and why we're making the investments to modernize where we are. Because I think for folks who are in other workplaces, they certainly have caught up and we are working to catch up. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Director. We'll move to our final presentation on the Marijuana Revenue Fund given by our Research Office, our Legislative Research Office Director, Matt Erickson. And I will also double back. I had a question for our Department of Finance, but I will double back to that. Sorry to jump around, but I'll turn it over to Director Erickson, who's wearing a tie today. It's just very nice.
The number of people who have noted this.
Oh, okay.
It's really more of a commentary on my general dress, I suppose. But
I would have put one on with you today if I knew. I'm sorry.
so be it. Look at this guy. As requested, I'm here to present details on Draft Ordinance 3436, which establishes a special revenue fund for receipt of adult use cannabis tax revenue. State Issue 2 allowed for the sale of recreational cannabis and was approved by voters statewide on November 7th of 2023. And those provisions are now codified in Ohio Revised Code Chapter 3780. Sales of recreational cannabis in Ohio are subject to a 10% excise tax on a statewide basis. And of that revenue, 36% of the total is required to be remitted to cities and municipalities that host recreational cannabis retailers within their corporate boundaries. Under current Ohio Revised Code, quote, "The municipal corporations or townships may use such funds for any approved purpose," implying that they are generally unrestricted. In terms of how much the city will actually receive as a function of the new provisions, ORC indicates that distributions to municipal corporations or townships shall be based on the percentage of adult use tax attributable to each municipal corporation or township, which means, in other words, cities receive revenue proportional to the productivity of the 10% tax relative to all other Ohio cities. Realistically, we don't know certainly how much we're going to receive. There have been no hyperlocal analyses completed, certainly on the City of Columbus at least. The Ohio State University and General Assembly have done some prior analyses that suggested that on a statewide basis, at least in year one, the state would expect to see something like $180 to $200 million as a function of that 10% tax. But again, the city's proportion of that, of the 36% that has to be set aside for host cities, we're not going to know until we start to receive deposits. The auditor, obviously, as has been mentioned a couple times tonight, included $8 million in her general fund revenue estimate for 2025. Should also be noted, we don't expect to see a dollar of this until likely at least July of 2025, after General Assembly approves the new 2-year biennial budgets, which would thereafter contain appropriations that allow for the distribution of those funds. This draft ordinance 3436 2024 really just does a couple of limited things. It establishes a special revenue fund, the Cannabis Host Community Special Revenue Fund, and it would require the auditor to deposit any revenue received as a function of adult use marijuana sales into this special revenue fund rather than treating it as general revenue. Ordinance is written as 30-day. So if it were to be adopted by council on December 16th, it would become effective in about mid-January. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Director Erickson. One thing I just wanted to just confirm that the establishment of this fund, it doesn't cause any changes to the budget that's presented. Is that correct?
If this fund were to be established prior to council ultimately adopting the 2025 budgets, what would need to happen is the following. The general fund budget that the administration proposed to council is predicated on that $8 million that the auditor included, which would then not go into the general fund. We would subsequently be required to amend the general fund budgets down by $8 million, but then would correspondingly amend what we refer to as the other funds ordinance, which contains the budgets for departments like recreation and parks and building and zoning services and non-general fund departments. We would be increasing that budget by at least $8 million.
Got it. So it's more of an accounting measure.
It would have no net impact on the all funds budgets.
Thank you for that. And I just raised that because I think it's this body's view of those funds that they are in fact special, that they are in fact funds that have come about because of the legalization of marijuana, which for years has been illegal and disproportionately affected many folks in our community and different neighborhoods. And I know that the setting up this fund, one, gives us time to plan around what those funds are, but I think it signals to this community that we see that as an equity opportunity for our community, and also for us to be transparent with the public of where we are actually spending our proceeds that come from that, and we don't see it as just another deposit into the general fund. So I just want to uplift that, and that we look forward to engaging with the administration on the long-term use of those funds, especially once we get an idea of where those receipts line up. So again, buy local. Also, indulge responsibly, but if you are in a municipality that is banning this, come on across to Columbus. We will take your revenue. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Barroso, Deputy.
Director Erickson, just to go back for just a second. So can you talk to me or talk to us again about the collection of these taxes? when are they collected? And then is there once they're deposited, is there any restriction on when and how we use them? Or is that is up to that is part of the decision-making process of this fund?
If this revenue fund, it might be helpful to state, if this special revenue fund were not established, those payments would be deposited into the general revenue fund. In order for the state to make those transfers, just like council as a legislature, requires appropriation authority, which is why we are not yet seeing receipt of revenue that has been generated in 2024, because issue 2 was passed by voters after the adoption of the current 2-year biennial budget, which did not contemplate or contain appropriations for the transfer of marijuana tax revenue. Presumably, the General Assembly, in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code, will include appropriations in the subsequent biennial budget, which we would expect them to pass by the end of June of 2025. And at that point, I'm a little bit out of my depth here. I might actually refer to the auditor in terms of how we receive funds from the state, but ORC requires that on an ongoing basis, they are remitted to the city, to all cities that would be recipients of them on a monthly basis. And again, as currently codified, I think it's fair to say that there are no current restrictions on the use of those funds. A special revenue fund implies restrictions ultimately, and I think that is something that council intends to engage in conversations about, either prior to passage or again into 2025 along with the administration.
And when we think of the projection of the $8 million, I'm looking at the auditor, but looking at this, somewhere in this front row, this answer lies. When we look at the $8 million, that would not come all in 1 month. That would be a payout monthly totaling $8 million. Yes? Yes. Okay. I don't think the camera caught that, but that was a yes.
Council member, I would expect that the first payment obviously is the catch-up for 2024.
Sure. So it would be a
First half
larger.
activity for 2025, and then monthly thereafter.
Got it. And then when we go back, and I think this might be for the auditor, and we talk about those projections, that first year will give us kind of what will that do in terms of our projection for the following years after that? And then follow-up question to that, will that give us some sort of indication of what that monthly payment might look like?
Councilmember, that's a difficult question, not knowing what our trends will look like. I think interesting and it's fair to say that, we've had in-depth conversations with both Mr. Erickson and Mr. Robbins here. We're all trying to learn and to get our arms around this. But truly, like many interesting, kind of revenues of the city, trends, behavioral trends, are really, really important. And so a comparison that I would offer is that of alcohol taxes. And there are certain years where, wine is more favored. There are certain years where more hard liquors are. And I anticipate those trends would also carry over to this. But we will be able to at least provide, I think, with more certainty, a baseline for you to expect. But let me pause. Anything that you would add to that? I'm looking at Deputy Auditor Wild. She's done a lot of research on this. Anything you gentlemen would add to that?
No, thank you. I think that's helpful. This is new territory for everyone, and we're all learning together. And I think as we think about, to Council Member, or to Chair Bankston's remarks about being intentional about where and how we use this funds are something that I think that we're all thinking about. And so I think certainly as we look at our partners and, we talked about this budget being tighter, I think when we think about the many ways that we could allocate these funds and apply them. I think as folks are watching this hearing, and I see folks who are here today who are advocates and other folks who have an interest in understanding, where these funds might go or advocating for them, I want to be sure that we're bringing folks along on this journey with us, right? That there is not, this is not hard dates. We know that we're reliant on, Director Erickson, you said this, we're reliant on the legislature to follow certain guideposts that are put into code, and we're relying on the legislature to follow certain guideposts put into code. And so I just want to ensure that, we're transparent about that as we start to have conversations with our partners around, $8 million is a significant amount, and that is a stream of funding that is new. And so as I'm sure these are wonders that folks also have as they're thinking about what the decision making that we're going to be in once this starts to flow through and what we're doing with these funds. So yes.
Councilmember, you brought up an excellent point, because one of the commitments that we've made to the finance chair through our prior conversations is that when we get information from the state that the revenues have been collected in such amounts, we will communicate that super transparently, and that will help inform you from a deliberation standpoint. But that will be part of our first new year, our first new kind of year of normal. So we anticipate, we have an outstanding ask today, actually, that hopefully we'll get some more information here even before the end of the year, and that will at least give you a little bit more to work with.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. And thank you, Director, for that presentation. I think, these are interesting times, and this is going to be, I think, up to us to really think about where, this is an opportunity for us. And I think thinking about where this goes and understanding the timing, I think, is going to be important for all of us as we all work together to think about how we best intentionally use these funds. This is another investment that our residents make. And so I think it's just important for folks to understand what this timeline looks like. So,
Thank you for that. Council President? Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you, Director Erickson, for all the work that your team has put in to this as well. That concludes all of our presentations. But I think to come back and Deputy Director, I'll turn it over to you. One thing I do want to highlight is most of our conversation that we're focused on right now is the general fund. That is the predominant source of all basic city services and our operating budget, if you will. But there are other funds and other places. If given a scenario, and I'm thinking about things that are working their way through the State House right now, whether that it comes to pension requirements that municipalities will have to pay and other kinds of things, these could be implications that change, right, our forecast just in the next less than 30 days before the end of this year. With that being the case, are there places in what is proposed now that we could shift dollars to a different fund or reduce expenses that are on the general fund to a different fund to help ensure that we still balance the budget? And this is a leading question, but one of them I think that we talked about is like tipping fees. I saw that another big chunk of the budget is around recycling. So are there other kind of line items like that that can be transferred to other revenue sources that would give us the flexibility, given, I think, the, quite frankly, moving financial climate that we have in just the last 20-some days of the year?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. That's hard. I mean, yes, there are probably a few places and a few things we can do, but it's tough to know exactly right now. I mean, we have something, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but the income tax set-aside fund has, we are able to spend some money out of there at some point next year, not within the first few months. But I don't know what that amount would be at this point, because it depends on what comes in for income tax revenue this year, as well as how they're doing next year. So That's hard to say.
And just to clarify, that fund specifically pays our debt service
That's correct.
for our capital expenditures.
That's correct. So we first off, I don't want to get too into it, but we'd have to, we need to cover our debt first before, what we owe first, basically, before we are able to use it for anything else. And then there are some restrictions within that fund as well. We have other funds in the past where we have moved things in and out, but by nature, when you set up a special revenue fund or an enterprise fund or what have you, those are mostly for specific expenditures. So it's hard. We'd have to, you gotta kind of go through the general fund budget and kind of look at some expenditures and say, well, does that fit into a special revenue fund? Is what we have to ask ourselves. And we may have to get the city attorney's office involved. They like to weigh in on those kind of issues. It's not always clear cut whether something fits or not. It's not always clear cut whether we should be doing it or not. If in regards to this, the $8 million we're talking about here, you will have to, basically at some point cut the administration's budget by $8 million unless you can move the $8 million into the special revenue fund that we're talking about, or we can find another place for $8 million. Because it has to, or it has to go somewhere or it gets cut. Chance, I think that partly answers your question.
Got you, and I appreciate that. And then just for a clarification, even because it gets a little wonky, right? We said $2.6 billion, right? We're talking about only 1.23 of that. That's the general fund that comes in from, lack of better terms, unrestricted resources. Enterprise funds, those other kinds of things, they have some type of restrictions to them, right? We talk about our Department of Utilities, which is paid for by ratepayers, not by necessarily taxpayers, and those types of things go to fund the actual operations of those individual enterprises, i.e. water, electric, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if you want to build on that, but just to clarify to folks, that distinction between that 2.6 number and that 1.23 number that we are talking about and that this council is looking at.
Sure, thank you. For instance, you cannot pay just regular police salaries out of water. You cannot use a restricted fund, whether it be an enterprise fund or a special revenue fund, just for any cost. They have built into either the adopting ordinance or, I don't know, maybe some other code. They have restrictions built in, and basically you cannot spend the money out of any of these funds that we're talking about outside of those restrictions.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And when I try to, the city attorney reminds me that I can, so does the auditor, so I got it. With that, we are going to move into the public comment portion. Before we go into the public comment, I know that we had one question online regarding the comprehensive safety plan. That was from Chet Rittenhauer. So Chet, we will get you in contact with our Office of Violence Prevention to get you those answers on that particular part of the budget. As of 12 p.m. today, which was our deadline, we received 2 speaker slips. So I'm going to call them both, and they can just come at that time. So first off, we have Charles Abernathy, followed by Brianna Chambers. And welcome to council. You have 3 minutes to speak. Just give us your name and any organization you may be representing.
Hello, my name is Charles, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm representing myself. I'm a Black Filipino queer man raised by a beautiful and assertive immigrant mom with a thick accent. I'm also an inspiring abolitionist. I lived in Columbus for the last 8 years, and I've called this city home. It's the largest city I've ever lived in, and I'm proud of the community I have cultivated here. My friends are vibrant and diverse in both identity and ideas, and I am blessed to have people who challenge my worldview to include more people in radical ways. I thought when I left my small town in the buckle of the Bible Belt, I would feel safer. I wouldn't have to worry about being harassed by police officers who make fun of my culture and make me prove my citizenship. I no longer have to endure attending church and Bible study with European Americans using the N-word like air. I thought my Days of operating in a community that offered false generosity and denied me basic respect because of my perceived and real identities would be over. Instead, I learned within my first year of living in one of the worst cities for police brutality how dangerous it is for Black and brown bodies, especially if they are trans and queer. I learned that this city addresses homelessness as a special project because we need to keep our jails filled because the pipeline to the prison slave labor is more profitable to donors. I learned how this city protects the state's interests over Black and brown bodies. Black mothers are dying, and yet we deny birthing centers that save their lives because white-led health organizations and medical schools still can't change their racist behavior. I guess it is hard to unlearn when we groom our children to be racist. I learned how on December 7th of 2018, the Columbus police murdered Julius Tate Jr. in cold blood outside his home on Mount Vernon. There will be a candlelight vigil and community dinner this Saturday at the Connection Center of all people at 4:30 p.m. Food will be served at 5 p.m. City Council is invited to attend and listen to the pain that you fund killing Black and brown children with our tax dollars. This year, your investment in the pain and destruction of marginalized communities is $400 million. That is a loud way to keep white supremacy safe. Some city council members stay ready to bend backwards to sing how they are advocates for human rights, but how can that be true? When you take trips to Israel and profit off of the dehumanization of Palestinians. You dirty our city when you do this. I guess as long as you are silent on genocide, your hollow political dreams will ensure that you have a pass into the amusement park of the crippling American dream. Instead of the people, indeed the people of color and the gay leaders in high places, surely they will stop this injustice. And I have believed I need to stop believing in that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and advocacy, Mr. Abernathy. And I think that it is not missed on this council the issues that this community has had around policing. And I believe that this council, under the current leadership, has moved to things and invested in things such as alternative crisis response to ensure that our residents are getting the right response. We see just the other day the prosecution of an officer the first time of being charged with murder and holding folks accountable. I am proud to have led an effort to get us a Citizens Review Board and an Inspector General. But it is not missed on us that when you talk about systemic racism, it is embedded in all of our institutions, whether it be private sector and public sector, that we have to work collectively to dismantle. And so I think collectively we are doing it. There is absolutely more work that has to be done, and I continue to work with folks such as yourself and advocates as well to make sure that we right that. So thank you for, again, your testimony. I don't know if my colleagues have any questions or comments. All right. And with that, next we have Ms. Brianna Chambers. And I will point out too that this hearing is about the finance and the overall budget. There will be subsequent hearings on public safety and other departments as well. Ms. Chambers?
My name is Brianna, and I'm with the People's Justice Project. With my testimony, I would like to discuss the work of People's Justice Project. We have been engaging with the community, asking people about how they feel about safety. What Mayor Ginther's budget proposal shows does not align with what we have found with actually talking to people. While the City Council has taken their sweet time figuring out a non-police response in Columbus, people have to deal with unpleasant interactions with police when it pertains to non-emergent crises. People have expressed to this organization that they do not feel safe around cops, that cops make matters worse, that police don't treat people like human beings, and that police have too much power. The power that the police have is supported by budgets like this, where $400 million of those dollars go straight to the police department, where dollars are being used to increase police presence. There is no reason for the police to have that much money and a lack of funding for services that actually can be used for things that could keep people safe. People have expressed to People's Justice Project that safety also means funding neighborhoods who are historically underfunded, investing in mental health services, programs and initiatives that can actually solve the problems of homelessness and poverty. There is no way that that people should be shocked by the amount of money that the police get over other priorities in the budget. There is no way that people should express discontent with the Columbus Police while the city decides to give them hundreds of millions of dollars. I know from looking at previous proposals and approved budgets that the budget for the police department will remain relatively similar to what we see in the proposal. This is a horrifying pattern and does not align with the residents of what the residents of Columbus need. There does not need to be a large investment of a police department that has murdered 10 people this year and since 2013 have killed 62 people and has been investigated by the Department of Justice multiple times. There are over 1,000 people on the streets, and instead of helping people get shelter, the city allows the police to raid camps and criminalize and terrorize unhoused folks. Also, I do not see any money for a non-police, non-carceral response. Meanwhile, organizations like People's Justice Projects have demanded a non-police, non-carceral response for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers, again for your advocacy. And I think some of my remarks hit on some of the work that you all have been doing. And this council looks forward to continuing to engage with you, specifically, I think, around that alternative crisis response, because I think that is one of the best tools that we have in our arsenal to address this, to ensure that our officers can focus on true violent crime, because I do think that policing, we're not going to police our way out of this. Police have to be a part of the strategy, and we have to hold them accountable because they do have, I think, an extraordinary amounts of power that we as a public give them. Therefore, there must be a higher level of accountability. And so we will continue to work towards that, to that end. But with that, I do think that there are other organizations that we work with that understand that when their child is murdered, they look to police to solve that crime. And so there is a role for them to play. But to your point, I think that we have to work continuously to make sure that we are getting the right response. And so, again, appreciate the People's Justice Project and all of the advocacy that you all continue to do, and we will continue to engage with you.
Chair, I'll just make one budgetary comment to Ms. Child's point. We are currently in contract and working through with the Department of Public Safety how we would do a non-police pilot. That is actively going on right now. That contract is working. So I just want to know that your advocacy is not going on deaf ears, that to the chair's point, we certainly need our police officers. We need more police officers, but every situation does not necessitate the same type of response. And so we actually as part of that contract is to engage the community. So you will be reached out to, and so that we can get feedback on how we could actually do that the right way. So just wanted to, that there are steps to it. We're in the step of how do we do it? And we have put dollars behind it, and it's in play right now. Thank you.
So thank you again to all of our speakers. Again, you can follow us on all of our social media channels, as well as the city's, believe website that will have upcoming dates for the individual department hearings. I know that next week we have public safety, and I'm looking at my team to tell me, or maybe I should probably just read what is on here, and that will tell me, huh? Department of Neighborhoods, Recreation, Parks, and Office of Sustainability also next week. So just want to let folks know that this is not the only place to engage, and that we will get into the weeds, if you will, of those individual line items in those subsequent hearings. So once again, I would like to thank all the directors and city staff present this evening for helping put this hearing together. I would also like to thank my staff, J.P. Dorval, Jonathan Brown, and Kaylin McDonald, as well as the Legislative Research Office, again, Director Matt Erickson and all of his team. Looking ahead, as I just mentioned, next week, there will be 2 additional budget hearings. The first of the 2 will be run by Councilmember Day Ackhauer and Councilmember Weich, regarding neighborhoods, recreation and parks, and sustainability. It will take place next Wednesday at 4 p.m. and will cover the proposed budgets for the departments of neighborhoods, departments of recreation and parks, and our Department of Public Utilities, and also the Office of Sustainability in our Department of Utilities. The second will be run by Councilmember Remy, our Chair of Public Safety, regarding public safety and criminal justice. That hearing will take place next Thursday at 4 p.m. and will cover the proposed budgets for the Department of Public Safety, the Municipal Court, the City Attorney's Office, the Office of Violence Prevention, and the Department of the Inspector General. So please reach out to those respective offices with any questions or a request to speak at those subsequent hearings. Is there any closing comments from any of my colleagues? President Harden.
One, Chair, just thank you so much for the process that you have laid out. This is probably one of the earliest budget hearings that we've had, and I think that shows a commitment to us moving this process along. I just want to make a note to the community who is watching tonight and will, hear us talking about a tighter budget. That does not take away our responsibility to hear from you. If there are needs in our community, there are sectors in the community that engage with the city, our job of our body is to listen. That is the fundamental responsibility of council. And so we will pass a balanced budget. We will continue to work with the administration, but we also, a big part of that is hearing from our community. And this is your period to do that. So when the chair talks about the 2 hearings next week, come and engage with us. We want to hear your advocacy. We want to know that that is the information that informs how this council then acts to move forward. So just again, thank you for your leadership. And I want to also thank the administration and certainly the auditor's office for partnering with us in this amazing endeavor of leading this great city. Thank you.
And with that, we will conclude our hearing. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us and look forward to engaging along this process. Have a good evening.